晚餐和电费只能选一个，你会怎么选？
Extreme poverty. You're playing a video game for the first time with no skills, cheats, or equipment. Then it's set to ultra hard mode. That's what extreme poverty is like. You're living on less than $2.15 per day, less than what you'd spend on your favorite Starbucks drink. You can't even stretch the last dollar in your pocket to buy a decent meal. Being under the extreme poverty line doesn't mean you're always short online. Instead, it means no access to food, clean water, shelter, and healthcare. These are basically the luxuries in your life. Think about your average day. You wake up, eat breakfast, turn on the tap for clean water, and maybe even grab your phone to check the news. If you're in extreme poverty, each of these things would be a struggle, or you might not have access to them at all. The food they can afford might be minimal, lacking the nutrition needed to stay healthy. You're practically immune to water-based diseases with all the dirty water you drink, but if you do get ill, healthcare isn't your vocabulary because you can't afford a visit to the doctor. You're basically in survival mode the entire time, making extreme poverty an uphill race against time. It's like being stuck at the bottom of a well with no ladder. Poverty. Poverty is like trying to win a game of Monopoly when you start with no money and no properties, and every time you pass go, you get a bill instead of $200. Insufficient resources struggle to meet basic needs, like food, housing, healthcare, and education. Imagine a day when you must choose between paying for dinner or keeping the lights on. In practical terms, poverty means living on an income below a certain threshold, but that threshold varies depending on where you live. You may be poor when you're living on $35 a day in America, but you'll be pretty loaded with that money in most African countries. But the point is that being poor means it's a daily struggle to put food on the table or find ways to pay your bills. But being poor isn't about not having enough dollars in the bank. It could also affect your quality of life and leave you stuck in a cycle because you don't have access to things that could help you escape the poverty loop, like higher education or better resources. There's also the idea of relative poverty, when you might have enough money to survive, still you can't participate in social activities in the community because your income is relatively low. Imagine having enough money to go to school, eat well, and pay your bills, but not enough to buy a smartphone. So while your friends share memes, you're playing Snake on your ancient Nokia 3310. Basically, being poor means your opportunities, choices, and freedom are limited, even if you might be making enough money to survive. Lower middle class. Imagine the lower middle class as a group of folks who are comfortably above the poverty line, but not quite capable of putting a pool in the backyard anytime soon. If you're in this class, you're living in a decent neighborhood, maybe in a modest home or an apartment. Your car might be the most reliable Toyota, but not exactly a Lexus. Being in this class means you have a stable job, but not raking in the big bucks. You're hardworking, maybe in administration, teaching, or trades. Bringing in enough to cover the basics, like food, housing, and utilities, won't be too much of a problem. But you're not in a situation where you can splurge on a shopping spree every time your paycheck comes. In many ways, people in this class tend to live balanced lifestyles because they can save for college and unexpected emergencies, but can't overspend. Buying that new iPhone yearly can throw a wrench into your budgeting plans. It's the financial version of, I'm just fine here, don't worry about me. If you were to put it in gaming terms, the lower middle class are experts at min-maxing, which is when you make the most optimal choices with what you have. And if you play your cards right, you might have some wiggle room for that fancy steak dinner you always wanted to try. Middle class. If you were to rate the middle class on a scale from 1 to 10, they would be 5. They're, as the kids would say, mid. You would say they're the Goldilocks of social classes, not too rich or poor, but just right. What qualifies someone as middle class can vary depending on where you live, your country's economy, and even personal perceptions. Being middle class is often tied to income in many places, but it's not just about numbers. Sure, there's a general income range, typically earning enough to cover your basic needs like housing, healthcare, and education, but with a little left over for comforts like vacations, dining out, or upgrading your smartphone without feeling too guilty. But it's also about lifestyle. Think of it as having enough to buy a new phone once every 2 years, but not enough to splurge on luxury brands weekly. If you're in the middle class, you tend to have a more stable job, like teachers, nurses, or office workers, compared to lower income jobs that might be more physically demanding or less secure. But you don't enjoy the financial freedom that lets you retire early. You can't also take unnecessary risks, like funding a wild business that could fail and turn you into a bottom feeder. It's a comfortable space where you're not stressing over every bill, but are still aware that spending too much could land you back on instant ramen noodle dinners for a while. Upper middle class. Being in the upper middle class means you're not in the cramped economy section of an airplane, but you can't afford the luxurious first class seats as well. You're right in the middle, where you can afford enough room to stretch your legs, but but not enough to have free-flowing champagne. This group has a good handle on their finances and lives a pretty nice life. If you're in this class, you'd have a stable and well-paying job, like a senior manager, a specialized professional, or a successful business owner. You can earn a decent salary to live comfortably in a nice neighborhood, send your kids to good schools, and take vacations. Education is also important because you wouldn't be where you are if you didn't get straight A's in high school and went to an Ivy League school. In most cases, you'd probably follow the lifestyle of the rich and famous because you have a premium gym membership or play golf at an exclusive country club, but you're not exactly flying in private jets or driving luxury cars. You're scratching the surface of what it means to be rich, but you're not there yet. But being in the upper middle class can be like having the best of both worlds because you enjoy luxuries without going overboard with your spending habits. You limit your extravagance, even if you might be living a good life. It's like drinking the finest bottle of wine, but still having one eye open on the next grocery store sale. Affluent. When you hear someone calling themselves affluent, you might want to picture a sunlit room with comfy furniture, fine art on the walls, and maybe even a grand piano in the corner. That's the lifestyle of someone with more than enough money to live comfortably while enjoying the finer things in life. But they're not exactly rolling in dough. If you're affluent, you can meet all your needs and luxuries while having a good level of financial security. It's not always about having a big bank account, though that's part of being affluent, but it's more about where having enough money meets a good lifestyle, where you have a nice home in a good neighborhood, regular vacations, and dining out at a fancy restaurant every weekend, where the waitstaff already knows your name, and they might even recognize your order before you say it. You can even invest in things like art, high-end technology, or a second property without digging into your bank account. Your wealth gives you choices and flexibility, even though you won't find your name on the Forbes list of rich guys anytime soon. Being affluent also means having a good grasp of financial management, often with investments and savings that grow over time. You might also have access to high-quality education and healthcare, contributing to a comfortable and secure lifestyle. Essentially, being at this level of wealth means having a financial cushion that you can sleep nicely on without worrying about losing your job or the inflation rate going up. You're not exactly swimming in gold coins like Scrooge McDuck, but you're comfortably floating in a pool of financial security. Upper affluent. Imagine that you've made it past the basics of financial comfort and living in a realm where the term financial cushion feels more like a luxury mattress. That's what it means to be a member of the upper affluent class. Being at this wealth level means that you have a solid financial foundation that allows you to enjoy many perks without constantly checking the price tag. Your income is significantly higher than average, so you can afford more than essentials. We're discussing things like upscale vacations, high-end cars, and maybe even a second or third property. Having pocket change also means being able to buy a car when someone dares you to. But it's not just about the big-ticket items. This wealth also means you can invest in experiences that enrich your life, like gourmet dining, exclusive events, and high-quality leisure activities. You might also have a financial advisor to help manage and make the most of your wealth because you can afford to hire someone to do the math for you. Socially, being upper affluent often places you in a circle with other high earners where discussions might revolve around investments, luxury brands, and maybe even philanthropy. It's a lifestyle where you're not just making ends meet, but actively enjoying the finer things and planning for the future. You're at the sweet spot where you can enjoy financial stability while indulging in your hobbies and having enough freedom and flexibility to do what you want without worrying about the future. It's like you found the golden ticket to the financial amusement park, where you can simply skip the long lines and enjoy the ride. Millionaire. Being a millionaire means you've hit the $1 million mark in net worth. This means that all your assets minus your liabilities are worth $1 million. Think of it as having a giant piggy bank worth 7 figures. In practical terms, this could mean having a mix of assets, like a big house, investments in stocks or real estate, and maybe even a yacht if you're feeling fancy. You're likely able to live comfortably without worrying too much about the price of everyday things. You might splurge on a few luxuries, like vacations or high-end gadgets, but you probably have a good chunk of your wealth invested in things that help it grow even more because even your money needs a vacation. Being a millionaire doesn't necessarily mean you're ultra-rich like the billionaires you hear about in the news. A solid financial position allows for a comfortable lifestyle and financial security. You're more likely to be able to afford higher education for your kids, retire early, or start a business if that's your thing. And it also means you can finally have that gourmet cup of coffee every morning without thinking twice. Of course, the cost of living can vary greatly depending on where you are. In a place like New York York City or San Francisco, that million might not stretch as far as it would in a smaller town or rural area. You might spend more on parking than a month's worth of groceries. But overall, being a millionaire means you've got a decent financial cushion and some flexibility to enjoy life's perks without sweating the small stuff. Multi-millionaire. Let's say you've leveled up in the world of millionaires and taken the next step into becoming a multimillionaire. You're like a Pokemon in the sense that leveling up in the financial world allows you to evolve into your next stage. As a multimillionaire, you're not just worth at least $1 million. Instead, your net worth is now so high that it's multiple times higher than your regular millionaire. It might be in the 8-figure range, but it could also be in the 9-figure stage, where you're worth hundreds of millions. Being a millionaire is not just about having a big stack of cash, but also having so many zeros in your account that even your calculator is starting to sweat. You're looking at more millions than you can count, coming from a successful business, smart investments, even a hefty inheritance, or maybe even a magical ATM. Multimillionaires enjoy a lifestyle including luxury homes, high-performance cars, and multiple properties worldwide. Your investments include real estates, stocks, and expensive art. At this stage of wealth, you make decisions based on passion and interest, rather than necessity. It's like that successful YouTuber who pursued a career in the WWE because he's set for life. But it's worth noting that being a multimillionaire doesn't necessarily mean you can swim in a pool full of cash daily, because it only means your net worth is high. You could have no money in your wallet or bank account, but still be a multimillionaire because of your assets. That's a good thing if someone robs you on the street because you don't even have a penny to give. Billionaire. If you're a billionaire, you're basically in a contest where you and other rich people are trying to win a contest of who has the most zeros in your net worth. To put things in perspective, if a millionaire's wealth is like owning a fancy sports car, a billionaire's wealth is like owning the whole racetrack. $1 billion is $1,000 million. To make things clearer, imagine having $1 billion. You spend $1,000 every day. Most people can't even spend that much daily unless they live in hotels and eat luxury food every meal. But spending that much in a day will take you nearly 3,000 years to spend the $1 billion in your bank. Basically, billionaires have more money than they could count or ever need in a lifetime. With billions of dollars, you could buy a private island, a fleet of yachts, or even a small country if you feel extravagant. But beyond the glitz and glamour, billionaires often invest their money in businesses and technology. They might be behind the next big tech innovation. That iPhone you're looking at right now comes from the millions of dollars invested by billionaires. These guys don't always have the easiest lives because they manage large companies, navigate complex investments, and handle public scrutiny of having such immense wealth. Imagine people telling you daily that you can feed all of Africa with half of your net worth. Still, that beats having to work your daily 9-to-5 job.